So my name is Alannah Wister. I attend UA High School, and I went to Hawaii to study at the Hawaii Institute of Marine Biology in Oahu. Okay, so my main research focused in the coral farm, which is it's like a 12-acre little plot where we spanned beams across, and there's actually netting all alongside these beams, and we would grow corals or rehabilitate them. So we would take them from the local bay and put them in there and study them and see how they grew. And we actually had a little nudibranch that would eat off of the corals, which that was a major problem in the area. So we were trying to solve solutions for that, and we actually found a way to get rid of those, so that was super impressive, and we're actually working on publishing that, so I'm very proud to be a part of that. So that was my little shack, and that door actually opened up, and then we would go inside there and work there every day. So I worked mainly with 3 different types of corals, and I performed multiple different growth analysis experiments. And so the first one focused on using 3 different types of corals and placing them together and seeing how the change growing together rather than simple corals and one species. So that was very interesting to see how they grew with friends versus just by themselves. So my favorite part of the whole experience was spawning season, which actually I learned that the spawning of corals directly correlates to the moon cycle. So I worked a lot with the spawning, and I would stay out from like 8 at night when it would begin to probably 3 o'clock in the morning, and that happened 4 times while I was there. And so the top left picture is a photograph of one of our PhDs who was collecting all the little gametes, and so we had to use red light because the corals are very, very sensitive. So even if you had like a phone flashlight, it could affect them and they would stop spawning, which it's very important that they do spawn so that we could grow more corals. And we kept them in buckets and then would use pipettes to collect, and we had to count each one that we put into the bundles or into the little Eppendorf tubes. So that was kind of tasking, but it was my favorite part. And then I also worked with a time lapse of the nudibranch that I mentioned earlier. So we would see how fast that they would eat all of the algae off the corals and turn white. So that was a time lapse camera that we set up of the whole process. And then in the middle was us creating the little Eppendorf tubes of the corals that we would use in our experiments. I also helped out just a lot. It's kind of just wherever they needed me, I would help out. And so that's actually the spawning of a type of sponge, which was bright orange, which was very interesting. And it was cool because you would literally have to rip it apart and then collect the little bundles out of there. And then you would have to filter water a lot. And then this is the intern that I worked with. She was a local intern from Hawaii, and so I worked a lot with her. And we also set up an experiment with flow to see how different amounts of GPH, which is gallons per hour, would affect the coral's growth. So it was interesting. Trying not to get electrocuted was very fun because a lot of marine biology is just using scraps and just trying to piece together some PVC and zip ties, and yeah. So this is the little place I called home, which is the island of Coconut Island, or Moko'oloi, which is not going. Yeah, so on the left there is actually where I lived, the red circle, and that is my little shack, and I was next to the Shark Institute, so that was really fun because I would always go over there and help them with the sharks and feeding them, which is literally a frenzy. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's pretty crazy. And then on the right, the red circle is the coral farm, so I would have to walk the 1-mile loop around because you can't just cut over. So got my exercise in a couple times a day when I would go for lunch and such. So the island that I lived on was very interesting because it's used in a lot of filming. It's the opening shot of Gilligan's Island, and that's my roommate on the left. I had 3 college roommates, and we would have a lot of fun trying to work the boat system and getting groceries in the pouring rain because, much like Telluride, Hawaii does not have plastic bags. So it's always interesting carrying plastic bags back home during a rainstorm. So in my free time, I spent a lot of time just exploring Honolulu and Oahu. And that was Professor Rob Tunan's family, who I had a first day with, and we went to the beach, which was very fun. I also explored Honolulu and, yeah, just going around. I also spent a lot of time hiking and spending time with my roommates, and they have such a thing as First Friday. So in Hawaii, we would go down to Honolulu, where everything was free, and they would have like vendors and lots of music and food out, so that was really sweet to see. So thank you.